Welcome back to part 2 of our summer update series. I'm Bill Chaves, Director of Athletics, Erik Martinson, Deputy AD, Jody Hodgson, REA GM. So we talked a lot about our Fighting Hawk sports partnerships in part 1. Part 2, we want to kind of get into some projects. REA and Betty, what's transpiring, and on the grounds of what's going on here as well, because there's a lot of things going on with soccer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll start and I'll give it over to Jody. But I think one of the coolest things is when you work in sports, we always want to try stuff, right? Like if we see something, like it's great to try it. Some stuff might not work, right? But I think that one of the coolest things that part of our partnership and our relationship and what we're doing is we're willing to try things, and we want to see what ultimately, how do we get people to games? How do we get people to stay at games? How do we get people excited at games? And we talk about that constantly in our meetings of what can we do and what can we try and what can we try to figure out. And we're just ultimately, we want the best experience for, again, the student athletes, but also the fans when we're at those places. So a lot of great things happening with here, and with the help of the Ralph Engelstad Arena and things happening in the Betty internally. In some areas you might not even see, and other areas you're going to see have big impact on what you see on a nightly.
Because we mentioned when we were doing the summer series, when Paul was hosting, we had said a lot of times, right, there could be thoughts that the summer could be more of a downtime. And in some ways it is, because there's no games going on, but it really picks up administratively, doesn't it? Yeah,
it sure does. We always say it's the success season, right? Like, you better do things right in the summer that are going to allow you to be successful during the busy event season. So big projects this summer, like if you were to kind of check off the boxes, right? I think you'd say, hey, women's basketball program, redoing locker room this summer, great project for them. Our soccer program, redoing their space here this summer, great project for them. In the Betty as well, I think that's the one thing where fans will see some differences when they come in here in the fall. We've got a new seating section on the north end of the facility there that's going to allow us to retract that seating really quickly. If you think of it, it's gone from being a portable system to a fixed system that'll allow us to clear space for our programs to practice.
That's right, a big deal.
Yeah, to free up space for them to get shots up, to practice, to do that more frequently. We think that'll help with the development of all 3 programs there. And then Erik and I were just down on the floor here looking at what we're proposing for the south end of the Betty, where we're going to try and enhance kind of the in-venue experience for fans and create a hospitality area, try and improve the fan experience there. So a lot of things happening in the Betty this summer. We've also begun some conversations on design work for what we would call sports medicine improvements, as well as nutrition and fueling station for our programs in the Betty. So real exciting stuff happening there. And as well with our hockey program, some smaller things. We're still finishing up some of the weight room projects and things we had going last summer there. So tying those things up. And I think that's one of the neat things at UND. There's a lot of people pulling on the rope to try and make improvements all the time and try and move the ball forward, so to speak. And really exciting.
Different ways too on the funding aspect to it. Sometimes we have our donors, right? They step up. It's tremendous. I mean, so there's just different ways to fund these opportunities. But much like we talked about, the more we can get support, whether it's via corporate sponsorship or however that goes, it makes these particular projects possible.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there is one silver bullet, right, that can be used for every project, and it takes a combination of things, and we're so lucky to have, a donor base and a support base that allows us to do those things. I guess realistically, you'd say even when we're funding things internally, we're doing so on the backs of the supporters, right, in terms of ticket revenue and donations and everything else they do for us.
Yeah, it makes a major impact in the things that we can do, again, on a daily basis, and also on a competitive side of things when we're playing games in our venues. So it's a major impact on the different ways, like you said, the different funding mechanisms that we use. We don't use that's the same one every time, but we're trying to find ways to put things together and really make things happen. And that's been the fun part about the summer and the projects that we can do, we're lucky to have the support that we have because it does make an impact.
Yeah, and certainly there's probably multiple constituencies. We're always trying to think through, like, the fan experience. You come in, how can it be the best possible? That's certainly one aspect of it, and certainly from a student-athlete standpoint, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like we talk about impact areas. Sometimes impact areas could be $10,000.
Yeah,
right.
sure.
It doesn't have to be a $10 million project.
Right.
It could be that simple, right? We're utilizing a space that hasn't been used.
Exactly. Agreed.
With that, that's discussing some projects that are going on this summer. That's the end of part 2, and we'll be back for part 3.